Breaking news! The NFL is in a heated state behind the scenes. There's a lot going on at once, and we need to catch you up. The Denver Broncos just got a wave of good news, and trust me, you're going to want to hear it. This isn't your average offseason update. This is the kind of information that could change the trajectory of the team for the foreseeable future. From avoiding major pitfalls in the trade market to the exciting potential of our young offensive weapons, there's a lot to unpack. Before we get started, make sure you've hit the like button if you agree with me that Bo Nix is better than Russell Wilson. I totally agree with that. If possible, comment something like, "Go Broncos! Let's go to the Super Bowl." Speaking of Wilson, he's one of the names we'll be talking about today. First, let's talk about a bullet the Broncos just dodged. The Raiders were aggressively pursuing Matthew Stafford, reportedly offering him a massive $50 million per year contract. But Stafford turned them down, choosing to stay in Los Angeles despite California's higher taxes. What does this mean for Denver? A division rival just swung and missed at a top 10 quarterback. Stafford, even in the latter years of his career, remains a dangerous playmaker, and the idea of facing him twice a season was not something the Broncos needed. This is a clear sign that Las Vegas is struggling to attract top-tier talent, even with the financial advantage of playing in Nevada. And to make matters even better, the Raiders have now turned their attention to former Broncos quarterback Russell Wilson. If Wilson signs with Vegas, it would be an absolute dream scenario for Denver fans. Seeing Wilson twice a year, knowing exactly what he's capable of and where his weaknesses lie, would give the Broncos the huge advantage. Imagine the energy at Mile High if Wilson returns in silver and black. It's almost too good to be true. Another key takeaway from the Combine is that the Broncos were reportedly involved in discussions about acquiring wide receiver Deebo Samuel. However, Denver ultimately decided against it, which is likely a smart move. While Samuel is a dynamic playmaker, his production has dipped, and acquiring him would have required giving up valuable draft capital and taking on a hefty contract. Instead, it looks like the Washington Commanders will land Samuel, and the Broncos can continue developing their existing receiver room, a unit that Sean Payton has expressed confidence in. This is a crucial point because it highlights the culture Payton is building. He doesn't want to disrupt the chemistry in the locker room with a high-maintenance player. He believes in the talent already on the roster, and one player in particular is emerging as a potential star, Troy Franklin. If you haven't been paying attention to Troy Franklin, now is the time to start. He showed flashes of brilliance late in the season, particularly in the game against Buffalo. Several times last season, he was just inches away from connecting on big plays, and now he's putting in the extra work during the offseason to ensure that those near misses turn into game-changing plays. Franklin has been grinding, releasing footage of his workouts, his route running, and his speed, proving that he's determined to make a leap heading into next year. The chemistry between Franklin and Bo Nix, who stepped up in key moments last season, is something that could take this offense to another level. If Franklin can make the kind of second-year jump that Marvin Mims did last year, the Broncos could have a true playmaker developing right in front of our eyes. Speaking of Bo Nix, one of the biggest stories from the Combine revolves around his connection with Tez Johnson, his adopted brother and former Oregon teammate. Johnson has been flying up draft boards, with scouts raving about his speed and route running. At the Senior Bowl, he put on an absolute clinic, showcasing elite separation ability and leaving defensive backs stumbling. Johnson has openly stated that he believes Bo Nix was the best quarterback in last year's draft class, a bold claim considering the talent that was selected. But if he's right, and Nix continues to grow, Denver fans could be looking at a long-term answer at quarterback. The Broncos have already met with Johnson, and if he falls into the later rounds of the draft, the idea of reuniting him with Nix in Denver is something that could have real potential. On top of all that, the tight end situation is shaping up to be one of the most intriguing aspects of the draft. For months, analysts have been touting Tyler Warren as the top tight end prospect, but now there's growing buzz that Colston Loveland might actually be the best option available. Sean Payton has an eye for talent, and if there's a discrepancy between media narratives and actual front office evaluations, trust that Payton will make the right call. This is significant because tight end is a major position of need for the Broncos, and in a class loaded with talent at that position, they have a real opportunity to find a difference maker. The bottom line is this: the Broncos are in a better position today than they were a week ago. They avoided a costly trade for Deebo Samuel, dodged the nightmare scenario of playing against Matthew Stafford twice a year, and might get the opportunity to face Russell Wilson as a division rival. Meanwhile, young stars like Troy Franklin and Tez Johnson are emerging as key offensive weapons, and the team has a golden opportunity to add an impact tight end in the draft. Broncos country, what do you think? Are you excited about the potential of Troy Franklin and Tez Johnson? How would you feel about Russell Wilson suiting up for the Raiders? And what do you make of the tight end rumors? Let me know in the comments. I want to hear your thoughts. One of the most exciting things about this offseason is how well-positioned the Broncos are to make smart, calculated moves rather than desperate ones. Sean Payton has been methodical in rebuilding the culture and roster, and it's starting to pay off. One of the biggest takeaways from the Combine isn't just about who the Broncos might draft. It's about how much confidence they have in the players they already have. And that starts with Bo Nix. The buzz surrounding Nix continues to grow, and not just because of his on-field production. The fact that his former teammate and adopted brother, Tez Johnson, is out there making bold claims about him says a lot about the leadership and impact Nix had at Oregon. Think about it. Johnson isn't just some casual fan hyping up his friend. He was in that locker room, on that practice field, catching passes from Nix every day. If he's willing to say that Nix was the best quarterback in last year's draft, that carries weight. And the Broncos seem to agree, because they're taking a serious look at Johnson as a potential weapon to add to this offense. What makes Johnson such an intriguing prospect is his elite speed and shiftiness. We're talking about a guy who made defenders look silly at the Senior Bowl, creating separation at will. And while he might be undersized, there's something special about players who have that kind of chemistry with a quarterback. If the Broncos were to draft Johnson, it would give Nix an instant comfort weapon, a guy he already trusts, who knows his tendencies and timing, and who can be a game changer in the slot. But Johnson isn't the only former Oregon player the Broncos are looking at. They've also met with an Oregon running back and an Oregon tight end, which raises some interesting questions. Are the Broncos targeting Ducks specifically, or are these just the best players available? One thing we do know is that Payton loves to build continuity and familiarity in his offensive schemes. If he sees an opportunity to bring in multiple players who already have experience playing together, that could be a major advantage. And let's not forget about the tight end situation. This is a position that has been somewhat of a revolving door for Denver in recent years, but this draft class is absolutely loaded with talent. The shift in perception from Tyler Warren being the consensus top tight end to Colston Loveland now rising up draft boards is fascinating, and it's exactly the kind of scenario where Payton thrives. He doesn't care about media narratives. He cares about finding the best football player, period. And if the Broncos can land a high-impact tight end to pair with this young core of receivers, this offense could take a huge leap forward next season. On the other hand, the Chiefs are still the team to beat, and the Broncos need to build their roster with that in mind. The good news is, they're making smart moves, avoiding unnecessary trades, keeping their draft capital intact, and setting themselves up for long-term success rather than short-term desperation. And that's what makes this upcoming draft so critical. Every decision matters, every pick matters, and if the Broncos play their cards right, they could be setting themselves up for sustained success in the years to come. So Broncos country, now it's your turn to weigh in. Do you think the team should go after Tez Johnson to pair him with Bo Nix? Are you buying into the hype around Troy Franklin? And how would you feel about Russell Wilson in a Raiders jersey? Let me know your thoughts in the comments.